What's up, YouTube? Welcome to update number 4 on our tier list. There's been a lot of changes this week, specifically talking about the overperforming specs being nerfed. There's some of the bad specs being buffed. A lot of things will change, and that's why today we've gathered up to discuss it, update it, and once again, have fun while doing it. Major disclaimer, nothing that I say is final and nothing that I say should be preached as a gospel. It's purely my opinion, so if you guys don't like it, that's perfectly fine. Any feedback, as always, leave it down in the comments and I will be responding as much as I can. Alright, so before I begin the tier list, I would like to say something towards Blizzard. If Blizzard can hear me right now, I would like to say one thing. They did really their best to try to balance every single spec this season, because we've seen a lot of changes, even sometimes twice or 3 times per week, which is obviously a good thing to the game. So that's a major prop up. Yes, there are still some classes that do very well and there are others that don't do as much, but if there's one wish that you guys can grant me if you can, is either remove target cap from all classes or make sure that they are balanced enough so we don't have situations like some of the specs being capped and others not. It just makes a pretty, it leaves a bad taste in our mouths in the long term. Okay, that's all I can say to Blizzard. If they want to hear to me, that's fine. On a C tier was Holy Priest, but because it's the only healer here, it's gonna go automatically to B tier because there is no healer on B tier, and right now Holy goes from B to C, which pretty much means C tier will be disabled. Disabling C tier. That's good shit. Alright, yeah, Holy Priest right now is, in my opinion, the lowest performing healer. Honestly, your sibling spec is doing way better than you. There's no, there's no reason people to invite you over. Your HPS and DPS is nothing particularly, amazing. They're just average. Mob control is just like this, but it's quite weak. So all of this leads you to being pushed down to the side. That doesn't mean you cannot time your average keys, or you can time, for example, your weekly keys. Of course you can. Any DPS heal or tank can do it. You're just less likely to be invited and less likely to be desired by the rest of the peers. So that's why that's why I think it's B tier. Sub Rogue. Now a lot of people would disagree with me. Yes, you guys sent me some clips of casual doing some great damage on Sub Rogue, but that's maybe one person out of a million people. In my opinion, Sub Rogue still lacks the damage output outside of cooldowns, and in a casual point of view, keys, you are going to be suffering compared to the top DPS classes. So hence why I think Sub Rogue is going to be around B tier right now. Unfortunate for them. That's the only thing that I could say about Sub Rogue. I think single target so far, like burst-wise, is actually pretty strong, but in terms of consistent damage, I think it's not nearly there where I wanted them to be. So I think B tier is more deserving. Could I be wrong about Sub? Most definitely I could be. In the average kill level, title kill level, I think around B tier, but perhaps, I don't know, further adjustment to the spec would help them big time, in my opinion, actually. I know a lot of people are clowning on Oak Evoker, and even though they went from C tier to B+, Augmentation Evoker is still a decent choice going to Season 3. Why is that? Now, personal opinion is the damage contribution from Augmentation Evoker is not as high as a actual DPS spec, but the defensive capabilities and the utility that Evoker can give you to the team can mean a lot. Okay, so in my opinion, this could be a wild card pick. Maybe late into the game, once we have like insane amount of gear, you would play Augmentation in some forms of shapes of form. But as we stand currently entering Season 3, the first couple weeks, I don't think we're going to see as much action compared to Devastation, which I think Devastation is already better than Augmentation, specifically after the nerfs too. So yeah, that's what I think about Oak. I don't think it's terrible. I know some people have it as like trash or C tier. I don't think Oak is C tier, but at the same time, it doesn't replace the actual third DPS value. Maybe in some cases, there are some dungeons. Yeah, maybe in some dungeons could be different. So what can I say about Destrolock and why do I think it's B+ tier performance? First, I would say this: if you're playing high level keys, Destro is most definitely not B+. I would have it much higher, considering the large amount of pools you can play around Destro, and especially in a pre-made group. But in a casual level keys, and also in a keys where you don't pull as large, Destro can fall behind specifically in those scenarios. Single target is actually also an area where I don't think it's as great. So perhaps further tuning around this part could help them, in my opinion, better than some classes. So solid toolkit overall. I just need to see a bit more buffs coming for this right now to place it higher. Blood DK still gets the crown for the worst tank. Now, people are gonna come after me and be telling me now, oh, but Blood DK got buffed. Think about it. Last week we had Guardian and Blood DK as the worst tank. Guardian received 12% auto buff and Blood DK received 8% auto buff plus Sunday nerfs. So obviously Deathbringer is still gonna be probably the default choice now. I'm not sure actually, but overall speaking about Blood DK, durability wise need some love, damage wise still need some love. Utility is pretty much, you know, non-existent. I mean, not like non-existent, but you're one of the few tanks that don't have actually any buff to the party. AMZ and grips are pretty useful for you, but you don't have an actual damage or defensive amplifier for your party, except for the AMZ, which is every 4 minutes or 3, depending on if you have the talent. But yeah, overall, I don't think Blood DK is looking as promising next season. Sure, you can still time your average keys, but in a grand scheme of things, most of the tank specs have already received rather substantial buffs, and now it seems like your buff wasn't as big. Unfortunate. So Guardian started as B tier tank, I believe 2.5 weeks ago. It went from B to B+, and now it's A tier. Guardian is slowly climbing the tier list, which I think they definitely deserve the aura buff of 12%, which is, again, the buffs exactly in the right direction. They're pretty tanky. Now they do more damage as well. Self-sustain is getting, it's the same as it's been. Obviously, that damage buff won't help you as much. But overall, I would say you are versatile enough to be played in both range, physical comps, and also hybrids, which is an advantage of that. Mob control of Guardian Druid, one of the weakest, if not the weakest so far, which I think could be a weak point for you in some cases. But overall, it shouldn't really be big negative, I guess, feature if your party can help you out with those stops. But yeah, overall Guardian got buffed, so therefore A tier is a lot more deserving for them. Alright, moving forward to the next DPS spec. Yeah, Guardian has the weakest mob control. Like compared to other tanks, like think about what Vengeance can do, what Prot Pally can do, what for example Brew can do, etc. Prot Warrior. Like Guardian has like Urso, Vortex, Typhoon, and Roar. That's it. That's pretty much all you have, you know, unfortunately. I know you didn't want to hear that, but Retribution Paladin goes next to an A tier. Why is that? Personally, you were on the A tier last week, but a lot of specs around you has been buffed. So therefore, they're pulling ahead and you're staying the same as you were last week. Unfortunately, your single target needs a lot of changes. Your overall AoE output is not bad. Obviously, that's your strongest part, but it still needs some love to catch up to the S tier classes. You're pretty tanky, got good utility, have good externals for your team like freedoms, and have like bops and lay on hands and, you know, sacrifice, etc. Devotion aura. But overall, I'd say a little bit more buffs coming for them shouldn't be bad, especially on single target. Maybe buff spenders or just do anything to help Retribution climb the rankings. Balance Druid to the A tier. Now a lot of people also seem to think that balance is dead. I've seen some tweets about balance being dead and like Teros memeing on balance, but I actually don't think balance is like completely dead. Okay, the AoE output is actually not bad at all. Single target has been improving. The prior damage, obviously, it's a little bit non-existent, but that didn't really stop them last season to become S tier. I think another set of buffs are likely to come on the balance rate just because their pure single target sim didn't rank that high. So therefore, I would say it first on the stream and don't pitchfork me, but I believe balance will likely get another buff in the upcoming weeks just because their single target is not really as competitive. Why is Press Evoker A tier? Press Evoker is actually very, very hard to make it work in Mythic Plus, just based on the way that your healer spec is playing out. In my opinion, you are likely going to be one of the unfriendliest healers to play Mythic Plus, but if the players know how to play position or play around you, your HPS is one of the best so far. It's going to feel fantastic. Utility-wise, also pretty good on Evoker, so that's going to be no problem. Output, both damage and HPS is astronomical. So overall, I'm a big fan of Evoker, except the way that they heal. I don't like it, and I hope in the chat or in the near future by Blizzard gets to be changed somehow to be more casual, friendly way to heal. In terms of Holy Paladin, this has everything that healer needs to be S tier, from utility to mob control to the way that it helps your team, externals, etc. The only thing Paladin that don't have is just healing. There's been a lot of healing checks right now in Mythic Plus where I find myself struggling to live when Holy Paladin plays with me. This is one of the weakest features I have for Paladin, and if that gets to be addressed or further changed / buffed, I don't think Holy Paladin should be A tier, maybe jumping to comp dependent or A+. To the A tier. Now keep in mind that Holy was already A tier last week. This week they're going to retain their A tier placement, but in my opinion, you definitely lack the damage that you need to be S tier. Like single target don't look as good. Consistent AoE damage looks okay, nothing too crazy. Small target count cleave also feels a little bit sus at times. Overall, you're also gonna get overshadowed by Frost DK, which in my opinion is far better than you are. So technically speaking, you will not see the light of LFG unless you're playing Frost DK. That's the TLDR summarized for your spec. You won't see the light of LFG unless you play Frost DK. In the current tuning, things can change. Things can change, okay? I'm just saying, things can change. Outlaw gets demoted from 8+ to comp dependent. Keep in mind, Rogue hasn't seen any changes so far this week. And I'm demoting Outlaw for one particular reason. I do believe you're A+ tier performer, but in the grand scheme of things, only when you play physical comp. If you are playing hybrid comps or magical comps, I think you're more like, you know, A-ish performer. But in a full physical comp with your Mistweaver buff, with the Warrior buff, with your consistent damage, I think Outlaw definitely deserves in a A+ positioning, even higher depending on how well you play. Also, keep in mind that the ceiling cap for Outlaw Rogue is actually one of the highest, just because of the highest APM spec in the game. Maybe not the highest, but definitely top 3 high APM specs in the games, which makes it not as easy compared to like most of the specs, unless you're a zoomer. But if you have arthritis in your hands and you're old man, don't play this spec. Okay, this is for the young bucks. Affliction Warlock is also A tier. Shit. Fuck me, man. Okay, let's talk about Affliction Warlock. Why is Affliction A tier? Listen to me. I'll tell you right now. Affliction Warlock has seen immense buffs on single target and also prior damage. Affliction Warlock is also gonna be one of my ults that I consider playing this season, and I'm gonna explain why do I think you are still gonna be A tier instead of A+ or S tier. Okay. The main difference between you and the specs on A+ right now is the fact that every minute to 2 minutes, every time that you don't have cooldowns and you enter the pack, disregarding if you have Veil Taint or not, you will be gapped by a lot of specs. If you meet the condition where you actually get to have your 1 minute on each pack or 2 minutes, then I think A+ tier is definitely deserved. But that's why I'm saying it's a conditional A+ tier. So that's why I put it on the very top of A tier and not in a comp dependent. That's the only reason why do I think Aff right now is A+, just because of this. But overall speaking, in the grand scheme of things, if neither of those conditions are met, I think more of like A tier would be acceptable for you. So far. A lot of people think Monk is dead. I've seen it everywhere. Monk D tier, Monk C tier. Why don't you put Monk in a D tier? I'm going to explain for once and for all why do I think Monk has the capabilities to be in a comp dependent, which is actually higher than A tier. Your pure overall damage at times is lower than A tier. In some of the specs, you actually can be beaten with those specs. The thing is, every time you play with a protection warrior, you need a Monk buff. If you don't play Mistweaver, you need to play Windwalker Monk. Therefore, Windwalker becomes far more valuable as a team member compared to some of the specs like DK, Boomy, Red Pally, etc. So the Mystic Touch can carry you up to the rankings, and in my opinion, it will be the case next season too. The damage of Monk is not bad at all. Their single target is actually pretty good. The burst damage is pretty good. You're still soft cap, obviously, and mass AoE, you can still feel bad. But in grand scheme of things, it will do better than what people think it's gonna do. So I actually am an advocate for Monk, that I don't think you're bad. I don't think you're meta, but I don't think you're bad either. I think you are around average / above average, depending on what you're playing with. Mistweaver, same condition as Windwalker. Your output and HPS, output both damage and HPS don't look to be impressive, but in my opinion are good enough to be placed in a at least A tier. Mob control is very solid. Sustaining HP is also pretty solid. External defensive cooldowns are likely the weakest out of all healers, just because of Chikakun. But overall, in a physical comp, Prot Warrior for example, etc., or anything else, for example Guardian, Mistweaver can be a default pickup if you don't want to play Windwalker and if you have different tank than Brew. Hence why I think comp dependent is deserved by them. A lot of people now will come here and tell me Fury Warrior is dog shit, 5 target cap, yada yada yada. True. Mountain 10 actually, with your Thunder Blast, has soft cap damage, which means even in mass AoE, you're still gonna be doing some damage from your uncapped AoE with Thunder Blast. So that can save a little bit the tears of anger that you're gonna have when playing Fury Warrior. Their single target also not too bad. Actually, they're doing pretty good. So consistent damage is doing way better outside of the, I guess, you major cooldowns, but you have them pretty often, every 45 to 50 seconds, just because of anger management. So overall, I think Fury, if I have to be honest, will be quite popular with Arms Warrior together starting next season. Why do I think so? Brewmaster is one of the best tanks so far, Mythic Plus. Therefore, whenever you play Brew, you need a Warrior. Warrior is going to be a staple choice by the physical comp. Therefore, you're going to see them a lot more often starting in Season 3, just because of Brew being so good right now. Both Fury and Arms. I think in some dungeons you're going to play Arms other than Fury, but Arms has better mass AoE damage compared to Fury. Fury perhaps could be played better in dungeons like Tazavesh Streets, for example, Echo Dome, Aldani. I'm unsure whether or not you're going to actually play Fury only on those or Arms everywhere. I'm unsure. But whether you play Arms in Fury, you're still going to have a placement in a comp just because Battle Shout is valuable. Although you don't bring anything majorly beneficial to the team outside of your Rallying Cry and Battle Shout. So, yeah. And also, to be honest, Warrior damage only by itself is not bad at all. You are at least A tier. Like, if I have to consider only damage, I think it's going to be A tier. No cap. That's what I think about Warrior so far. Even if your damage is not compatible to the S tier specs, you are still going to be seeing a lot of Warriors, like a shit ton of Warriors, just because of this. Assassination Rogue. Assassination Rogue, even though it did not get any changes this week, I still believe it deserves to be in an A+ tier, purely because of output damage right now. I don't think you are worse than some of the specs placed above you, hence why your damage will be the sole responsible factor to be an A+ tier right now. So how to deal with a bad single target? There's a lot of ways to do it, but the most common way is to put mobs on top of the bosses to get better funnel damage, to make sure you actually do a competitive ST. That's one way. That's one way to tackle it, in my opinion. Now, if you don't get any changes to Rogue, I would actually be surprised if they don't. And we might have situations where Outlaw can actually become the best Rogue spec. That's one thing. If I don't see any more changes done to Asa, I think late into the game, you might find yourself playing Outlaw more than Asa. Just because you're mostly, in my opinion, Asa don't benefit as much from Mystic Touch compared to Outlaw. Outlaw is purely physical. Survival Hunter hasn't seen any changes, but they're absolutely blasting in Mythic Plus and likely the best version we've had on Survival Hunter ever since the thewarwithin launch, which I'm very happy to play, and in my opinion, it will be played a lot more starting in Season 3. Consistent damage, 40 seconds, pretty much major cooldowns, good prio. Overall, there is nothing else you would like to have but a good survival hunter in those casual label keys where I think it will be likely played a lot better than some of the other hunter specs. So overall, I'm a fan. Overall, I think they will be doing fantastic. Retaining A+ tier, and it's actually doing way better than some people think it is. And I'm going to explain why. First of all, AoE damage of Pharaoh Druid is absolutely fantastic. There is nothing else that I want from Pharaoh but having a strong AoE. Love it. It's one of the specs that you'll be playing in a physical comp. Absolutely. Absolutely in a physical comp. It's very strong. The only thing that I don't like about Pharaoh is actually my single target. That's it. That is the only thing I don't like about Pharaoh. But overall, as you can see, I'm a very big Pharaoh enjoyer, and that's my mini Pharaoh in my room, as she's very willingly disturbing my stream on cooldown here because she likes attention, and if I don't give it to her, she will bite my leg until I do so. But yes, chat, Pharaoh Druid is definitely one of the, in my opinion, specs that will be surprising a lot of people, including myself. I was surprised when I played it. The output was very promising. Also, keep in mind that it has a good funnel, but not as good as some classes, but it's good funnel too, right? If they get to be buffed somehow on single target without buffing their AoE, I would be surprised. Question is, how can you buff the single target of Pharaoh without over buffing the AoE damage? Maybe buffing Shred, buffing the rake damage. I don't know how exactly. Buffing bites would definitely buff AoE too though. You wanna bite in AoE too. Free bites plus regular bites as well in AoE. So I think maybe like buffing Shred to like 100% could help you a little bit, you know? They can't buff ST without buffing AoE. That's the issue. The Moonfire buffs won't help you guys. Yeah. Exactly. Buffing bites will help the AoE damage much better. The first tank is going to be Protection Warrior, which I think is one of the strongest DPS specs in the game when playing a tank, which is very exceptional. Has very good self-sustain. It's one of the contenders played in a physical comps just because of how strong it is. And in my opinion, has improved in terms of durability. Obviously, have seen some nerfs the past couple weeks. Nothing for this week, however. And I still think it's going to be a super solid choice going to the Season 3. So big W for Warriors. And if you're considering playing Prot Warrior, it's still going to be good. So don't worry about it. I've placed also Restoration Shaman so far on the A+ tier. They haven't seen any changes this week. They will retain the A+ tier spot, which I think they are one of the healers which will be likely the default choice for physical meta, because Wind Fury is extremely valuable buff to the physical meta, and also the mob control, the utility, the bloodlust, all of this combined together makes for Restoration Shaman likely the perfect pick when you play with the physical comps. On top of having good HPS, DPS department is a bit lacking, but it's whatever. Mana issues sometimes could be present, obviously, but yeah, that's about it. Protection Paladin. I know you're gonna go after me, but I gotta explain. Protection Paladin is not S tier. That's it. I said it. Hate me if you want to. Hate me if you want to, and I'm gonna explain why do I think it's not S tier. It could be S tier if your name is fucking Yoda. Maybe it is. But for the mass amount of people, it will be too squishy to the S tier, especially against Vengeance DH. But maybe on the extreme high end of players, maybe if you're doing like water first keys or whatever, maybe it could be insane. I'm just talking about for the mass amount of people, for the average Andes, for the title Andes and below that, it would not be S tier. It will be at most A+. So stop coping on Paladin. It's not insane. I think it's good, but it's not super Omega Galaxy broken into oblivion. That is not the case, chat. I like every single Paladin that I played with, no matter if they were Chinese or fucking European NA and then title Paladins, they were just dying randomly. Like they were tanky, they were so tanky, but there's like a pockets of time they just die. Like out of nowhere, they just flop. So maybe in order to be S tier, maybe they just need a Disc Priest with a PSs exactly when they need them. Maybe that's like a conditional S tier. Maybe. I'm not sure. But you guys are right. I haven't played with Yoda on his Paladin, so maybe Yoda on his Paladin could be insane. I don't know. Maybe. Rip fucking balls in the chat. Demo logs are going right next to Feral Druid. I know you're surprised. I know you're mad about it. But Demo has gotten actually quite substantial nerf in Mythic Plus. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I'm just saying they will be worse than they were last week. It's still going to be a super solid choice for rating. It's still going to have good single target. It's still going to be decent in AoE damage. But in comparison to the top tier specs, it is no longer an S tier contender. And specifically after not having even a raid or party utility except for the hailstones in your curses and you know, like... I mean, like, not like party buff, you know, sorry. It has a party utility. It does not have a party buff buffing your party. That will also put them a little bit downer. Even if it's better than some classes, the fact that you don't have any meaningful damage increase contribution to your party, it would not be as good. Just as a comparison, let's say, even if you do more damage than Pharaoh, even if you do more damage than Enhance and Ellie, you still won't be picked up just because you don't have the value that they can have. For example, Sky Fury or Arcane Intellect. That's very valuable in my opinion. Shadow Priest right next in line. Now, I have a lot of things to say about Shadow Priest. Listen to me before you judge me. Listen to me. Listen to me. I believe I've tested all builds on Shadow. Whether you are playing Archon, Voidweaver, etc., I do believe Shadow Priest has a lot of potential on the highest of the highest keys. Not only because of your damage profile being so good, but it's also because of the utility and the way that you do damage. The highest of the highest keys, Archon is blasting. That's the problem. Highest of the highest keys. This tier list is not based on the whatever first key into the game. I don't think you are S tier contender into, you know, all kind of key levels. Voidweaver is still likely going to be seen a lot more on your average keys, on your even title keys in some cases. I was playing 16 keys on PTR as Shadow Priest and they were just dying. The mobs were dying so quick that I couldn't get my void form out of. So I still think you're good, but I don't think you're exceptional. And in my opinion, A+ tier is a solid choice for you, but it's definitely not S tier and it's definitely not the best range right now. Devastation Evoker climbing from A tier all the way to A+ tier for the past couple of 3 weeks. They've been getting buffs left and right, small and big. I believe after the most recent buff to overall damage amp plus Firestorm, it was something else that they got buffed by 20%. Devastation is now gonna, in my opinion, crack open the A+ tier, going right around top 12, top 13 specs into the game, maybe like top 11, top 10. So overall, they're getting pretty good. Exceptional AoE damage, decent single target. I think it needs more buffs on ST right now, in my opinion. Decent prio depending on how you play around Engulf, but overall, a lot of people will be surprised how good and bursty this spec is, and it's gonna perform, in my opinion, better than some classes placed below them. Placed above them. But the value is not there. I don't think the toolkit is exceptional for you. Sure, you have some ways to help your team, but you don't have that party damage amplifiers, like for example Wind Fury, Arcane Intellect, you know, like Mystic Touch, Chaos Brand. You don't really empower your team. I mean, Bronze buff is useful. You get some CDR on your movement speed. You have the 3% extra healing for your healer. I forgot the name of it. Was it called Magic Font? Fuck, was it called Magic something? Good crowd control, knockups, for example, push, etc. You can dispel bleeds, you can dispel magic, curses, and poisons. Zephyr and Rescue are very handy, of course, but I don't think your overall value, not only from damage point of view, but you know, toolkit value is S tier contender. Beast Mastery Hunter still deserves A+ tier, and I'm gonna tell you why. I've been testing both the non-multi-shot build and the multi-shot build. If all of you are playing multi-shot build, that shit is dog shit compared to like no multi-shot. Like without multi-shot, apparently actually does better. Like no cap. So next season, BM Hunter will actually play without multi-shot in Mythic Plus, which is crazy. But this way you get better funnel damage, you get better single target, and better AoE output, which I think BM Hunter would likely be one of the specs you're going to play in a physical comp just because they benefit fully from Mystic Touch and also Battle Shout from the Warrior and the Monk. So overall, one of the specs that I expect people to play quite a lot in physical comps. Overall, W, although has been nerfed for the past 3.5 weeks. Unlucky for them. Next in line is going to be Frost Mage. So even though Frost Mage hasn't seen a major amount of changes this week, I still believe Frost Mage is incredibly strong in Mythic Plus. Both from prio, single target, and consistent AoE damage moving forward. Like, utility-wise, Mage is one of the best in my opinion. Durability-wise, they're looking fantastic as always. And it's also the prime contender when played in a magical comps just because of the Arcane Intellect and the group mob control they have. Short CD on their Dragon Blade Blasting Wave, and also CDR on kick if needed, and CDR on your stops if needed, plus perma slows to peel for your tank. So overall, I still think Frost Mage is super solid. Right next to Frost Mage goes Fire Mage. Fire Mage, after the nerfs, I don't think Fire Mage is as strong as before. The damage is not S tier contender right now. As still, the value of Fire Mage is still going to be incredibly strong, in my opinion, likely to be played in some of the top tier comps, depending on how what the remaining of your team can be. So if you look at the grand scheme of things, Fire is still going to be incredibly strong. However, after the most recent nerfs, I don't think it looks to be S tier. I don't think so. Enhanced Shaman is actually one of the specs that I believe it will be played quite a lot, especially in a magical comps and hybrid comps, just because of the way they do damage, which is very competitive right now. Proud which is insane, Funnel is insane, ST looks to be good, AoE is also pretty good, utility likely one of the best in the game right now, obviously just like Ellie, and in terms of mob control, once again, super strong spec. I don't think you do as good of a damage compared to like some of the specs in this tier. So if you only rank Enhanced Shaman in damage, it's gonna be probably end up being around here, like middle of A+ tier. If you only care about damage. But I think I do care about other stuff. Hence why I think you're gonna be in A+ tier. Just because of this. Like the whole utility, party buffs, and etc. I think Enhanced deserves to be in A+ tier right now. Deserves it. It deserves. Even if it does less damage, than some of the specs, in my opinion, of A+ tier. The whole toolkit is super strong. Blizzard also forgot about Havoc anyway. They didn't get anything. They haven't seen any changes at all. But Havoc is still super strong in Mythic Plus. The best prio in the game, with the best prio in the game right now. Solid single target, solid AoE damage, insane utility, decent mob control. I mean, what else do you want? Good self-sustain, immunity option 2, short defensive cooldowns. Yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. I like Havoc. It's just like the overall damage contribution doesn't look to be broken, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Ellie has been getting the buffs they needed. The single target buffs are amazing, and then all of those things will push Ellie all the way from A tier to A+ tier. Exceptional damage coming from Ellie. Not only the burst damage, which is one of the best right now in the game, very good prio, way better single target, way better single target. Utility is already amazing, and in my opinion, it will be played quite a lot in the magical comps. Now, there is the reason why I am saying Ellie is not S tier. There's one reason. Hear me out. Shut the fuck up. One reason. Ellie is reliant on having DRE proc or tier set proc or having cooldowns to do damage in a pack. So there are conditions where if you don't proc, you don't do damage. That's it. That is the only reason why I'm saying Ellie is A+ on top of A+ instead of S tier. If they had, for example, their tier set to be proccing after 6 Awakening Storms instead of 9, I think it's gonna be S tier because that means way more consistent DRE profile. But because it's 9, there's a pockets of time where you have nothing for the pack and therefore you are gonna be empty-handed, okay? So therefore, I think A+ tier would be optimal choice. I'm gonna say Brewmaster right now. So why is Brewmaster not S+ tier? Brew actually was S+ tier last week, where Brew and Vengeance were all together on the very top. However, after the most recent buffs to Vengeance, I think now it's clear. Brew is still very strong, but I think Vengeance takes the cake right now in Mythic Plus. Hence why I think it's gonna drop some value in. However, it's still gonna be the best tank for physical comps. Therefore, it's still gonna be played quite a lot. It's still gonna have high desire to be played. I think self-sustain, durability, and damage looks to be way better than last season, and all of these factors combined together would make Brewmaster still one of the best tanks to play Mythic Plus with. And remember, Brew is gonna be a contender for the physical spot, all on top of the Protection Warrior, but only future tuning will showcase us if that's gonna be the case. I still think they're amazing. Following situational S tier is gonna be also, I'm sorry to say this, but Arcane. Arcane, I don't know. Arcane is really strong, but I think when you compare Arcane with MM Hunter and Frost DK, it's just getting destroyed. However, Arcane has one of the best funnels into the game, and that is the only reason why do I think that will save you in the grand scheme of things. I think Arcane is still gonna be insane. It's still gonna be S tier, but if you're looking into the like who does the most output, it's Frost Mage right now and MM Hunter, like by far. But Arcane is still insane just because of the strong single target and strong funnel damage, which again will elevate your spec much higher than you were. I guess. I mean, you were always S tier. Now I was gonna say last season, but you were S tier. You were S tier in the whole PTR pretty much. So yeah. Frost DK, MM Hunter, Vengeance, Restoration Druid, Disc Priest. Let's talk about it. Let's move forward. Why do I think those specs are S+ tier? I'm gonna talk about each one of them. Disc Priest. Disc Priest, it still looks to be incredibly strong even after the nerfs to the shield. The healing profile looks to be one of the best and the most unique so far across all Mythic Plus and seasons in the past. Because again, absorb shields are way better. Proactive healing is way better. External is one of the best, double PS, barrier for example. And overall, I still think you're super solid. The question is, would there be any HPS checks that you cannot meet? And right now, Restoration Druid HPS is the best in Mythic Plus, which means your spot is not guaranteed. Restoration Druid also has very strong party buffs in Mark the Wild phase. In my opinion, super strong healing profile, damage-wise similar to Disc Priest, maybe slightly better. Mob control way better than Disc Priest right now. Utility it's fitting better than it was fitting last season because there's a lot of poison spells right now, which this can't do anything about it. And this can be playing a role whether you're playing a Restoration Druid or not. Also has a CR, which can be useful at times, although if you play Frost DK, you don't care about a CR right now. However, should you get nerfed in healing, I think this will overtake you, and that means the death of Shadow Priest is gonna come. So if you were actually a Shadow Priest main, you would be hoping the Restoration Druid makes it to the S tier, because that means you will have a chance to be shining in S tier. If not, then life is not looking good for you. So Vengeance DH got buffs this week, massive damage buffs in the face of a little bit durability nerfs with Mastery, which is gonna be pretty much non-existential because Mastery was already bad stat anyway. So yeah, Vengeance got damage buffs, which is exactly what they needed because they were quite behind in damage compared to other tanks. But right now looks to be extremely strong in Mythic Plus. Very good self-sustain, very good mob control, one of the best. Good mob control, good utility as well, very good damage now as well. So overall, Vengeance has everything that it needs to have to be S tier. Moving forward, MM Hunter. Yes, MM Hunter has been nerfed last week. I guess this week is still Sunday by a very small margin, and there's still exceptional whether you play Dark Ranger, whether you play Sentinel, which again, Sentinel right now does a little bit more damage. It's incredibly strong, one of the highest burst specs into the game right now. The only thing I don't like about Sentinel is that your single target is not looking to be as strong as some classes, but overall, if you are playing with Arcane Mage, you would definitely not have that problem because Arcane can cover the ST for you and you can just do the AoE damage. However, you don't have party buffs, and that can be played, that could be a very bad for you, because if you get nerfed, you will probably gonna drop a lot of spots down just because of that. Right now, the only good thing about Hunter is just the damage. That's it. You're probably gonna make it in the physical comps. However, if you remain that strong, maybe you're gonna be played in every comp right now. I am unsure. But looking at this, we don't have a certain comp. Frost Death Knight, similar situation. 1.4% nerf on Frost Decay this week, which is pretty much nothing. They're still one of the best specs into the game right now. Consistent short offensive cooldowns, super strong minute and a half cooldowns. One of the tankiest spec into the game right now. Grip is gonna be incredibly valuable in this season just because there's a lot of stationary mobs in Mythic Plus. AMZ obviously value went down a little bit, but it's still gonna be useful. And overall, Frost Decay looks to be pretty decent going to the next season. However, should we get nerfed again, things will look a lot rocky for you. That's it. That's all the update. So, quote unquote, we don't have finalized meta on S tier. That's it. That is the quote unquote. We don't have the finalized 3 Exodia specs to the S tier. We don't. Arcane Mage is the likely contender to the S tier with Frost Decay and Hunter, but it also could be Ellie. You could also substitute Hunter for Ellie because Ellie right now will do better single target than Santino Hunter. Santino, however, Hunter does better AoE output than Ellie right now. So it's all like what I like to see is I like Hunter to get nerfed a little bit, like in AoE damage, so it can go down, you know, like down a little bit, and Ellie can rise up. Like this would be the comp I would love to play. This comp, I would love to play that comp. Okay. Unfortunately, right now, Hunter is way too strong, and the AoE output is still incredibly bursty and good.